Well, as I just got done saying, Paul really wanted that Corinthian church to take part in that mission offering for the mother church. And if you were here last Sunday, you remember that Paul appeals to them, reminding them that it's really good for them to give. And last Sunday, Paul shared with them the example of the Macedonian churches, the poorest churches, which had given the most out of all the congregations. And if you were here last Sunday, you remember Paul said the reason why they gave more than all the other churches was because they had given themselves first to the Lord. Of course, implied in this, Paul's hoping that the church will see that when you give yourself to God, really give your whole self to God, and begin to walk closely with God, generosity flows into your life and out of your life. And so that was the first truth that we talked about, that Paul was hoping the Corinthian church will see. When you walk close with God, you cannot help but be generous. As we talked about last Sunday, it's really impossible to have a close walk with God, and the emphasis was on the word close. A close walk with God and not be generous. It's impossible to have a close walk with God and be stingy. Then last Sunday we talked about another truth. And that truth came not by way of Paul, but by Jesus. And that truth Jesus shared last Sunday with us was that when you give, you get. Plain and simple. When you give, you get. Now, as we talked about last Sunday, you don't give to give. The giving just happens because of your generous giving. And what do you get when you give generously? Well, as Jesus implied, using that illustration last week of making wine, you actually get more than what you've given. Joy, peace, fulfillment, and satisfaction. These are some of the gifts that you get when you give. Now today, Paul adds to that list of truths about giving. And here, if you were paying attention to the words that I just got done reading, the truth that Paul is trying to get across to those at the church was that when you give from your heart, you don't give reluctantly. You don't give out of obligation. When you give from your heart, Paul points out that the gift is given joyfully. It's given because of the opportunity to help rather than the obligation. You see that? Paul, again, has those Macedonian churches in mind. And he's saying to the Corinthian church, he's saying to us, the churches in Macedonia, they gave the way they gave because it came from their heart. They just weren't giving token offerings because, well, Paul says we've got to give to this, so we'll give. They gave generously because they were giving from their heart. They sensed the opportunity to make a difference in the Jerusalem church. Heartfelt giving is generous. And it's given out of the opportunity that one sees in making their gift. Rather than, well, I gotta give something. The obligation, the reluctant attitude. Many years ago, I had an opportunity to go to Alaska and visit about 12 different churches up in Alaska. These were all mission churches. And I was really impressed with all those 12 churches, but there was one church that really impressed me. It was the church in Nome, Alaska. Now, Nome is really far up. You can't drive to Nome. You fly there. That's the only way you get to Nome. You fly and you land in Nome at an old military air base. Now that church really impressed me because I saw evidence after evidence of heartfelt giving. Like the Macedonian churches, the church in Nome was a poor congregation made up of Tlingit Native Americans. And these Tlingit Native Americans survived by hunting and fishing, and a few of them were able to sell some of their meats and furs and sell some of the oil from the seals that they were harvesting to get some cash. Other than that, many of the Tlingit Native Americans just survived. So they were poor. But they really impressed me with heartfelt giving. And the first evidence that I saw of heartfelt giving was their front yard was a playground. I'd never seen a church with its front yard as a playground. So I inquired about that, and I was told that in Nome, which at that time had about 3,000 people, at that time Nome had no parks, no place for children to gather where they could play, swing, and gather in safety. And so this small congregation, with their meager gifts, sensing that need, sensing the opportunity to do something to make a difference in the lives of children in their community, bought playground equipment, put it up, put a fence around it, and turned their front yard into a playground. Now they couldn't afford to do that. But they did. Why? Because they were giving from their heart, based on the opportunity to care for kids. When I was there, they served a free meal to those in the community who were poorer than they were as a congregation. And I asked about that. We do this every week, 52 weeks a year, one meal a week. We serve to our fellow Tlingit Indians out there who are poorer than us, and they serve that meal. Again, they probably couldn't afford to do that as a congregation, but they did it because they were motivated from the heart to feed the hungry. The Sunday I was there, they were taking up a free will offering, much as we did for Bacone College today with our loose coins. They were taking up a free will offering for another poor church, not in Alaska, but way across the world in Africa. Again, heartfelt giving. Not out of obligation, not reluctantly, but joyfully. Why? Because the gift, as Paul said, is coming from the heart. When we give from the heart, we give based on opportunity. We give joyfully. The opportunity to help the needy. The opportunity to help children, as the Tlingit church was doing. The opportunity to house the homeless, as we do here at our church. The opportunity to make a difference in the lives of others. When you give, do you give more so out of obligation? Or do you give because of opportunity? How do you answer that question reflects on what's going on inside your heart. If it's more out of obligation, it says something about your heart. If it's out of opportunity, Paul says it says something about your heart. What's going on there? One day a missionary saw about a 12-year-old young lad carrying about a 6-year-old on his shoulders. And she saw him throughout the day. And wherever that 12-year-old went, the 6-year-old was on his shoulders. And so finally she got up to him, and then she began to understand why he was carrying the 6-year-old. And she could see that the 6-year-old was physically challenged, and that there was just no way his legs, which were malformed, would be able to help him walk. And so the missionary looked at this 12-year-old and said, "My, that's an awful burden to carry. Do you carry him all over the place?" And the 12-year-old shook his head and said, "Yes, ma'am, I do." "Wow," said the missionary. "He must be a good friend for you, because that's a burden. You look tired." The 12-year-old said, "I do get tired by the end of the day, but it's no burden. Because, you see, this little guy here is not a friend. He's my brother." There are a lot of brothers and sisters in this world of ours who have needs. Here in our community, in our state, up there in Alaska, in our nation, around the world. A lot of people in need. And sometimes it's tempting to see these needs as burdens. More burdens. But when we operate from our heart, as the young boy did, or as that church up in Nome, or as the Macedonian churches did in Paul's times, when we operate from the heart, we don't see burdens. We see opportunities. Yes, sometimes it's weird because there are so many opportunities out there. And yes, from the practical side, we can't meet all those opportunities with heartfelt giving. But we can meet many. We can meet many if we give from the heart. Paul quoted from that 112th Psalm. He quoted kind of referencing it to God, but also referencing it to those Macedonian churches. They scattered their gifts of grace, said Paul. They did it freely. And because they scattered their gifts of grace, righteousness went forth. It's my hope that we'll see giving as an opportunity, like the Macedonian churches, to spread righteousness. Righteousness in this world. Making it one person better as we give